It was the first draft of the first screenplay I'd ever written. It was 157 pages long, which is very long. And this guy who read it used to read for Disney. That was his job. And what he told me, I was kind of waiting with bated breath. Hello, and welcome to My Daily Walk, the show where I, a Hollywood guy, walk around and talk about anything and everything except what I'm contractually bound to conceal. If you want to add your voice to the record, please email me at MyDailyWalk@thiswaytv.com. That comes straight to me. I'll read it, and then, if you email me before the audience grows too big, I will read your email on the Friday show or on a Saturday free stuff episode, if the audience grows at all. And that's up to you, I guess. It's up to me. I need to be interesting, but you as the listener, I would encourage you to pass it on and spread the word. Anyway, I need to stop saying anyway. I do say that on occasion. That's diarrhea of the mouth, as one of my professors, one of my linguistics, or maybe it was my speech professor. The uhs and the ums and the likes and the knows and the anyways, those are all, whenever you hear somebody saying those things, it means they should not have said anything. They just feel like they need their mouth to keep moving. And so in this exercise, this extemporaneous, unedited, free-form stream of consciousness podcast, I do need to keep do need to fill each space with sound, but it doesn't mean I should bore you with my anyways or my uhs and my likes and my hems and haws. There, I almost did it. I literally almost just said anyway again to shift back to stay on track. It's a bad habit, something I have to adjust. Let's get back on track. The show this is the 8th Thursday. So if this is your first time listening, let me break down what the show is about. At least let me outline it for you. It's a work in progress. Bear with me. I am not a professional at public speaking. I do have a degree in a related field and have plenty of experience in public speaking, but as far as a regular daily show broadcast, there are people that do it every day. Radio personalities, television personalities, that's their job. So you could say this is my self-training ground. I know I've mentioned that in earlier podcasts, but I'm kind of reflecting back upon the format and the structure. Real quickly, Monday through Saturday, each day is a different theme. Mondays are a spiritual meditation. I call it Meditation Monday. Tuesdays are a life lesson. It's a reflection of some story from my life. Wednesdays are topical, just random list of topics I have. Thursdays, that would be today, is Hollywood Theme Thursday. Talk about my experiences, my insights, giving a glimpse behind the veil of Hollywood. Fridays are freeform Fridays. I hit record and whatever happens. And Saturdays are random. Can't even really describe what Saturdays are. You just have to listen for yourself. There you have it. Once again, email me at MyDailyWalk@thiswaytv.com. The screenplay. If you listen to last Thursday's episode, Hollywood Themed Thursday, I talked about development. I think I called it Development Hell 101, and I did cover in that some. I'm going to be a little repetitive because I covered some of this in that episode, but that was more broadly about development, and the screenplay is a critical element in the development process. But there's plenty to say about screenplays that certainly can't be covered in a half-hour podcast. But I just want to reflect upon my experience learning how to write. Learning how to write screenplays. I've written 3 feature-length, which means movies, feature-length screenplays, and one-hour TV pilot. So an hour-length TV pilot, plus the screenplay I'm working on right now. And of those completed pieces includes several drafts. Each one of them has included several drafts, except the TV pilot. Actually, that one, really, I think it's 1 draft. Maybe it's 2 drafts. I got some notes from my mentor on it that I have yet to do. It's on the back burner. But the screenplay is really the unsung hero in any successful film. There are successful films that were successful in spite of the screenplay. I don't want to besmirch some known commodities, so I will refrain from naming any that I would say would fall into that category. But that's the exception to the rule. If the screenplay is bad, it's most likely doesn't even get read. If page 1, literally, if the first sentence of a screenplay is so poorly written, it's possible that I would venture to guess that it has happened that a reader, somebody working for a production company, where they're the first line of defense, or the first, when people are unestablished writers are trying to get their foot in the door, there's going to be a wall that a barricade you have to get across, and that's the reader. That person is basically, it's the gatekeeper. And so if a first sentence has grammatical errors, or is a incomplete sentence, or a sentence fragment, or just something, if it's so poorly written, I'm willing to venture that there have been cases where an entire 100 to 120 page screenplay has been set aside and without moving past that first sentence. I'm not kidding. People have limited time in their schedules, and if a person purporting to be a writer botches the first sentence, that's on the writer. It's not on the reader. Why bother struggling through something that's poorly written? Let me give an example. Okay. For me personally, so I work in Hollywood. I'm not some super successful person, but when you work in Hollywood and you come into contact with people who don't work in Hollywood that want to, they look at you a certain way, like, oh, maybe you can introduce me to somebody, maybe you can, find me a job. Literally, it's the first thing that comes to people's mind. I've met someone who works in Hollywood, maybe. And there's nothing wrong with that frame of mind. And so there was this, let's see, it was the son of someone, I don't want to say who it is, the son of a teacher that one of my children was studying under, had written a screenplay. And my wife says, "Oh, so-and-so wrote a screenplay. Can you read it? Will you read it? Give him notes." Whew. I normally would say no. Again, there's only so many hours in the day, but in this circumstance, I felt a certain obligation, or there was some motivation where I decided, okay, I'm going to. So I get a copy of the screenplay, and first of all, it was printed on cardstock. I'm not kidding. So it was I don't know, 100 or so pages. An aside here, if you are writing a screenplay, think about a page a minute. If you're totally new to the idea of screenplay writing, that's basically the rule, a page a minute. So how long is a movie? 90 to 120 minutes. So aim for 100 pages. Try not to go over. If you can keep it to 90, if you can keep it to 85, because the thinner that screenplay is on that reader's desk or that producer's desk, the thinner it is, the more likely it's going to get read. If it's super thick, they're like, oh, no, I don't have time for this. But if it's 85 pages, they'll pick it up and they'll feel it and they'll go, huh, this feels like it's 85 pages. They'll know it. They will. So, don't go under 85 pages. You want it to be if it's a feature film. So I get this script and it's printed on cardstock. I don't know, it was maybe 100 pages, but so certainly a lot thicker than it should have been. And it was loose. It was not bound. It was so your screenplay needs to be 3-hole punched with a brad in the top and a brad in the bottom. That's it. The only thing that should be cardstock is the front cover and the back cover. Front cover just has the title, your name, if it's registered with the Writers Guild of America or whatever, that registration number. That's it on the contact information on the cover. And then you launch into it, no blank pages anywhere. Just open it up, start reading. So yeah, this guy may have heard that you need to print it on cardstock. The cover, maybe he missed the cover part, and the whole thing was printed on cardstock. All right, and it was not bound; it was loose, and there were no page numbers. And all of that wasn't even the worst of it. And I hate to rag on anybody. I mean, first of all, writing 100 pages is an accomplishment. And I don't want to discourage anyone. I'm just talking about formatting things that right off the bat, that good thing it came to me and not to anyone else first, I guess. Because those are all just, how are you going to give notes if you can't reference the page number on page such and such? Like, how do you give notes to somebody if there's no page numbers? Whew. So this was an arduous task, and not just for that reason. I don't know if this writer, this kid, he was in his early 20s, I think, if he had ever read any books on screenwriting. I don't know how you would read a book on screenwriting and make those fundamental errors that I've listed already. But I would venture to guess, no, he had never read a single book on how to write a screenplay, just launched into it. And there's something to be said for that in art. If you're an artist and you've got something in you and you pour it out, go for it. But when it comes to a screenplay, that doesn't work. You can write scenes like just off the top of your head and just pour it out, but it has to be structured a certain way. It's just formatting things that you have to do. And if you say no, the art is pure, don't mess with it. Well, good for you. Go create some kind of other artistic industry that might, work that way. But there's an industry already in place, and there's structures and formats that things you have to conform to. And that goes for story structure as well. And that's one where more people would push back. Well, the 3-act structure, it's archaic. You don't have to follow it. There's plenty of examples of movies that don't follow that structure that have been successful. Yeah, and those are the exception to the rule. I'll get into that in a minute. There's a book that I've read. I've read a couple of screenwriting books, and there's one that is the one I would recommend to anyone that thinks they want to be a writer. Read this book and do what it says, and your likelihood of success will, I would venture to say, is exponentially increased if you follow what this book says. Getting back to this, I actually didn't realize I was going to be talking about this one screenplay. It just popped into my head, and it's a good example. So the character, I couldn't even figure out who the protagonist was in this story, and I don't remember anything about it. But what I do know, I know it was semi-autobiographical, and so I believe this guy was he was an artist of sorts. I'm not going to tell you which area of art, but so the main character was that kind of artist as well. And so I don't know how autobiographical, he wasn't claiming it was about him, but clearly it was. Well, that's one thing he did right. One thing he did correctly was write what you know. So to be believable, either pick a subject matter you're very, very familiar with, base it on people you know, base it on yourself. Inevitably, every screenplay is going to have the author in some regard in the protagonist and even in the antagonist. But so he was writing from what he knew, and I imagine there were scenes that were interesting, but the problem is being interesting isn't enough if it's not. All right. I'm self-editing, deciding what direction we're going to go here. How far into this are we? Ooh, already 18 minutes in. Gosh, I could do a screenplay part 1 and screenplay part 2, which maybe I'll do. But let me tell you a little bit about certain screenplay, some rules, if you're interested at all. Here are the rules, some of the basic rules, just off the top of my head. This is rule number 1, fundamental. When you put pen to page, which is, I guess, an archaic expression, when you start typing, don't type anything that can't be seen or heard. You're writing a screenplay. What are the elements of a screenplay, a movie? Play on the screen, a moving picture. What are the elements? Your eyes see things moving across the screen, light, color, and your ears taking in sound. That's it. You're limited to that. You can't do long, introspective paragraphs describing how Joe feels about the wind blowing through his hair as his lover sails away. He reminisces about the last time they were together. You can't write that stuff in a screenplay. You can cut to another scene and write flashback and describe the setting where they saw each other last. Fundamental rule: don't write anything that can't be seen or heard. You can't say he felt good about it. You have to describe. Does his lip curl slightly as he turns away and walks down the dock? That's what you write. You can't write he had pleasant thoughts as he went home. Right? Where's the home? You can't. You can only write. All right. I think I've got the point across. Don't want to belabor that. Another fundamental rule. This may be debated, but when I started applying this rule, it helped my writing immensely as far as the readability of it. Never use ing, words that end in ing. I'm not talking about dialogue. I'm talking about in descriptions, action and descriptions. Let me break down the basic elements of a screenplay. You have the scene heading, which is interior, int, or exterior, ext, then the name of the place, boat, dock, and then day or night. That's the scene heading. That's it. Interior, exterior. It's not morning, noon, late evening. It's just, or it's not inside, outside. It's not. It's interior, exterior, and that's for the crew when they're lighting it. That's it. Then the name of the location, and then day or night. Again, for lighting, not morning, mid-afternoon. You just day or night. And then there's description. And in that paragraph, the description paragraphs adhere to this as closely as possible. Never go longer than 3 lines. It's a 3-line paragraph. I don't mean 3 sentences. I mean lines on the page. It can be 1 long sentence. It can be 5 sentences, as long as it's not longer than 3 lines of text. Because that helps your script move more quickly. If you got 5 to 6 lines of description, it's just this block of words that probably won't get read. One of the things that happens, especially if your screenplay gets passed up the ladder, some people just read dialogue. Literally, they'll be like, all right, let's just see what they're talking about here, and they'll just read the dialogue because it's quick and it moves fast. There's a lot. It moves quickly. Dialogue. You see, there's a lot of white space on either side of the dialogue. Then there's dialogue, and it's character name, and there's then you write your dialogue, what your character's saying, but there's also within the dialogue structure there are parentheticals, which if you need to specify something about, maybe your character is saying something to a particular person when there's more people there, say, so aside to, that's like parenthetical, or you need to hint as to what the per character's attitude is. So they're called Rileys, or they used to be called Rileys, the parentheticals that talk about the tone or mood, like sadly, I'll never see her again, talking to himself, or parenthetical to himself, I'll never see her again. Anyway, there's an anyway. Yuck. What else? There's transitions like fade in or cut to or end. Those are all. These are just the internal structure of a screenplay. There was something I was going to say and I got sidetracked. The ing. Of course, use it in dialogue. You don't want to. You want your dialogue to flow naturally, but in the description, when you're talking about a person, don't say he started walking across. He started walking down the pier or the dock. He started walking down the boat dock. Well, that's not a visual. That doesn't tell you. You don't see him start. Well, yes, you could see him start, but what do you see? You see him walk. So just say it in present tense, as if you're watching the movie. He walks down the boat dock. You assume he started walking. You assume he started, because if he was standing still watching the boat sail away, then it's obvious if he walks, he had to have started. So it's about being precise and concise. The fewer words, the better. And don't use ing, because it slows the action down. That's the point of no ing words. I remember finding an ing word in one of my scripts, going, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it!" And I don't know if I changed it or not, but it's not a hard, fast rule. But I'm telling you, if you adhere to it, your writing will be faster paced, and that is good. You want those pages to turn. You don't want anybody to get bogged down and bored. What else about that structure? Any other structure things? If they pop into my head, I'll interrupt myself and go on a tangent. But the screenplay, let me tell you the book before I forget. If you are at all interested in pursuing writing, get a couple good screenwriting books, read them first, and then get this book. And this is the book you should use while you write the screenplay. I'd say read through it, or at least start reading into it. If you're going to start from scratch on a screenplay, read through this book, and then it's called The Moral Premise. And I won't go into detail what it teaches, but here's my understanding of how this book came about. This guy, and my understanding is he's also a script consultant for a lot of high-profile films. This guy kind of knows, he works in the business, knows what he's talking about. I think he researched, did a study, like an actual, academic study of the most successful films, or some of the most successful films in Hollywood history, and to see if there was commonality, if there was a formula, and he he concluded there is a formula. It's not just the 3-act structure, but it's the character arcs. It's related to character goals and growth and transformation, and you've got to know those things going in. You can't just make it up as you go. You should know what each character's goal is, and the protagonist's goal should mirror the antagonist's goals in some way. In fact, their goals, the best screenplays are that their goals are exactly the same, but going about it in different, from a different opposing viewpoints, mutually exclusive viewpoints. So that book, I am almost out of time. I wrote 2 screenplays without using that one. And the first one, is kind of already applied a bunch of this stuff structurally and motivationally. But when I got to my 3rd screenplay, I was like, you know what? I want to apply that book. I'm going to try it. Try applying this for this script. And I followed it, and it was a high concept, low budget script. Well, turned out not to be so low budget, but I was minimal characters, only 3 characters, so I only had to apply some of these principles to 3 character arcs, and then I wrote it, and that's the one that got into the hands of the guy that became my mentor. So I applied the principles of that book and got it to a successful Hollywood screenwriter and producer, and he became my mentor. So that's just my experience. Screenplay is critical. It's at the beginning of the production process, but there's no movie without a good screenplay. There you have it.